If you are not consistently working and you only have one gig a month, you're not making more than a production cast vocalist. I did get burnt out. You spend more time on an airplane and in airports than you do performing your show. I was quite lonely. I was working a lot, maybe 2 or 3 gigs a month. I was barely home. Nowadays, it's like a game. It's all politics. It's all logistics. Who has better ratings? I was in the cast. Mr. COVID hit.
If you're a singer and you don't really play an instrument, you've probably heard that chips might not be the best for you. And today I really want to push back on this. It's the first time that I'm having an amazing guest on this channel. She started as a cast vocalist and ended up headlining her own shows. And she'll be here to tell us what that path actually looks like, what auditions are really like, and whether it's more open than we actually think. Hello, Martina, and welcome.
Hello.
It's so great to have you. I'm so happy to be able to have a conversation with you today, which is a bit of a different format from what we usually have on the channel. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. I am so excited to be here.
I'm really excited to chat with you today because the community here is a lot of musicians who actually play an instrument, and sometimes they're not playing an instrument. They're singers and they want to figure out what's the best path to work on cruise ships. And you have quite a bit of experience as a cast vocalist. You have also been headlining your own shows. And now you're helping artists, and you're also doing some recruiting work for an agency. So you have so much to bring to all of us, and we have so much to learn from you today.
Yes. So I started my career. I have a BFA in musical theater, and right out of college, I got cast as a production vocalist. And I did that for a while until I switched over to headlining my own show. Then I decided to be land-based, and I now book entertainment for a land venue, as well as working for a cruise ship agency specifically for headliners. And I'm the founder of Stage to Sea, where I coach aspiring performers wanting to work on ships, and specifically vocalists. So
Amazing.
Very exciting.
Yeah, this is so cool. And actually for people to know, the first way I got to meet you was seeing an ad of you on Instagram and thinking, hey, what does it look like to be a headliner on cruise ships? And that's what I thought I could do too. So I booked a consultation with you, and you told me so much about it. And then we were like, oh, we're actually both helping musicians and singers in the cruise industry, which we should do some things together on social media. Amazing. So I have a couple of questions for you based on what I see in the comments of the channel, and also for you to share a little bit about your story, about what you do. And so the first question is, what does being a cast vocalist on cruise ships actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Would you like to share a little bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you have different runs, I would say. Sometimes you have a 7-day cruise, you have a 4-day cruise, or you have a crossing, which can be up to 13 days. So it really, depends on how long your ship goes. And so I would say a day-to-day basis for a cast vocalist, you usually have 3 main stage shows and maybe 1 or 2 smaller shows in smaller venues. So out of a 7-day cruise, let's just go with that one, I'm performing 3 days out of the week. And on show days, I wake up, I go get breakfast, I go to the gym to kind of warm up my body, and then we have something called a tech rehearsal or a tech run, where we go to the theater and just run the show without costumes, just to make sure that all of the set pieces are rolling the way they need to roll, or that the automation is all working and microphones. So that is our tech run, and that's usually maybe like a couple hours before the actual show. After the tech run, we go get dinner, do our makeup, do our first show, have a little break, and perform our second show at 9 p.m. So that is our show day. And our show days are usually on sea days so that we can go out in port. And the reason they put shows on sea days is because Every cruise line wants to be named the best cruise line for entertainment. And the more eyes you have on the shows, the more ratings you get. And the better ratings you get, the better your entertainment department is. So that's kind of the day-to-day basis of being a production cast vocalist.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And so you said you had like around 3 shows per week. So 3 days per week you're performing. I've personally been on ships where like there were 2 shows a day, and sometimes they had like 1 or 2 days off per week. And I've also been on American ships like for a Caribbean where it was just as you said. So what would you say would be the difference? Because for a singer listening to us right now who is thinking that they might want to work in this industry, I'm sure they would love to know that they could get paid a similar pay if they're doing 3 shows a week or 3 days a week rather than doing it every day. So what would you say, like how to notice, from the outside? How do you know? Are there specific cruise lines that where you do every day? And
yeah, so I did pick up on a trend. A lot of the American cruise lines, for example, Celebrity, Carnival, Royal, they are pretty similar with the show structure. You may have more than 3 main stage shows, especially if you are doing a crossing, because you need to fill in those gaps. But I've noticed that that structure is kind of the same. Now, of course, every single cruise line is different. Always read your contract, because you may have a cruise line that requires you to do extra duties like running a trivia or running an activity or doing a tour. So always read your contract. But I do think the American cruise lines are more strict with making sure that you have a limited amount of duties just so you can rest and recover. And I have noticed that European cruise lines may have a little bit more duties and responsibilities than Americans do. And I'm not sure why that is, but the companies that I worked for were really strict on making sure that we were there to do shows, and that our extra duties were just safety drills, and maybe a backstage tour, which we were more than willing to do. But I think always read your contract and always do your research on which lines you're interested in. And you can now via social media find so many performers who worked on various lines that they can kind of give you more insight on that.
I think this is such a great advice, to always make sure that you know what you're getting into. And especially as it's quite different, because as a solo performer, like when you're a piano bar entertainer or guitar vocalist, I feel like the rules I'm not so strict about telling musicians to check the contracts, because a lot of the time you have an agent that will tell you how many sets you're going to do per day. But I think for the production vocalist, not only the contracts are usually longer, if I'm right, but also it's much more of an employee status than a contracted one, when as a solo performer, you tend to be hired as a contracted musician, like a guest entertainer, like more towards the guest end than the employee.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. The contracts usually are 6 to 8 months, and that sometimes includes rehearsals. Sometimes it doesn't. Whereas, like you said, the contractor situation is just more solo, by yourself.
Kind of like, you're your own boss kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Amazing. And what would you say surprised you the most when you started as a cast vocalist? So in your first ever contract, when you just arrived, maybe you had rehearsals before on land. What is it like? Can you tell us a little bit about it, and what surprised you the most about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was not expecting the rehearsals to be as vigorous as they were for my first contract. You are rehearsing 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday, Sunday being your only day to kind of really do laundry and catch up. But again, on Sundays, you're rehearsing for Monday. With the 3 main shows that we usually do, or that we did, plus the the little show, we had probably a week or even a week and a couple days to learn it. So vocals, choreography, blocking. And then at the end of that show, we would do an office run for the casting directors and any other casts that are in the facility. So not only are you rehearsing and learning, 3 main shows in a matter of 6 weeks, but you also have that pressure of, wow, people are coming to see me. They're coming to see this finished product. The casting director is coming to see if I'm able to kind of like keep up with the shows. So it's really rigorous, very nerve-wracking, and it's equally rigorous when you get on the ship during the installation process, because you are literally replacing the cast, but the cruise must go on. The guests come on. The guests don't stop just because you're a new cast. So you are rehearsing 3 days and opening that show with costumes now, mic, set pieces, and then it's just repeating that until all of your shows are open. So I don't think I was expecting how hard it was to keep up at first, especially with my vocal health. Physically, I was exhausted, but the payoff was I was in the best shape of my life because of how much we worked. And then afterwards, it was kind of like the reward. Takes maybe a couple months to really sit into those shows and get them into your body. But after that, on port days, you're able to go out. So I would say that was my biggest surprise as a cast member going into it. So I always encourage people that I coach to start now, start vocal lessons now, start working out now to get your stamina up, because you don't want it to catch up to you when you're in rehearsals.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that, because when I was on the ships, being a piano bar entertainer and having to perform for hours a day and stuff is very different from being a cast vocalist, because maybe in terms of timings, you have less time on the stage actually performing, but the behind the scenes is much more intense. Like, you have so many rehearsals, and also like when you're performing in the bar and stuff, you can make mistakes. People are tolerant. Right. You're singing along with people. You can get people to sing along with you, and it's fine. But when you're on the stage in the theater, it's like everyone, like, you have 500, 1,000 people watching you and eyes on you. Like, you have to be really good. So I'm really not surprised, and I think that's really good advice for future, like, aspiring cast vocalists to actually not only think about their voice, but see it as like the whole body and get healthy about it and get trained.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to train your body because you're doing 3 very different shows. You could be doing a rock show, you could be doing a Broadway one, and you need to know how to move your body. Some lines are more rigorous with their dance requirements for vocalists, and some are more lax and more park and bark type ships. But if you aren't a good mover, get yourself in dance class and get accustomed to picking up choreography, even if it's like a step touch or anything. That would be one of my biggest advices, is to get moving on it like as soon as possible.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So we have someone who commented on one of the previous videos on the channel. Her name is Linda, and she said, she asked how to even apply as a vocalist with no instrument. And so the question for you, I think that could really help her and maybe anyone else who is wondering the same thing, is like, what about the audition process? Like, when you are a singer and that you don't play an instrument, because I'm good at helping singers who can play an instrument, but when you don't play any instrument, like, what is the actual audition process? Where do you go? Who do you apply to? And what does it look like for you to audition as a cast vocalist for a cruise contract?
Right. So my audition story is a little bit unique and different than most, but obviously I have so many connections, so I do know what the process is like. You go to the open call. You have 2 selections of music, typically in the style of pop rock. And that's a whole other topic that I'm very passionate about. But you have your 2 selections, You go in, you sing your first song. They may ask you to sing your other song. Thank you. Next. If they call you back, they'll ask you to sing and prepare perhaps a song that they want to see you sing. Usually it's a very big, belty song, very hard song. And then you will move to the movement call or the dance call. And then once that is all complete, they may, call you back via email to send in a video submission, but that's kind of the process, the audition process as a whole. I love agencies. I work for one, so I think they're extremely helpful. But when I was on ships, I didn't have an agent. I kind of found out for myself. And if you're able as a performer to find out how to audition directly to these companies instead of going to an agent, I would highly suggest that, because obviously it's more for your pocket. And all you have to do is use the internet and type in Celebrity Cruise Line Entertainment auditions. It'll take you straight to their website and you apply. I did a video submission and that's how I got hired, but then you'll get to see all of their open calls. There's also different websites that you can go to, such as Playbill, Backstage, Actors Access. So I always encourage performers, because I've been in this position, to always go directly to the site rather than reaching out to an agency that you're not signed with to get you that opportunity. I think try that before you go with an agency. That would be my biggest advice.
Great advice. And I love this topic because it's very similar for musicians that are not part of the cast. Yeah. Like you can have an agent that will take, between 5 to 15%, or you can be on your own. And I love this topic as well because I wish I knew at the start. And I also think for musicians that it's a good thing to not have an agent, because you don't, it's more for your pocket, as you said. On the other hand, I feel like it might be good to have an agent, because sometimes if the working hours or anything that's in the contract is not respected by the cruise line, then you have an agent to stand for you.
Right.
Would you say that's the same for cast vocalists, where you would say that the cons of not having an agent, the cons of having an agent are less for your pocket, but the pros would be that you have someone to defend you if anything happens with the cruise line? Or would you say just don't get an agent even though you're one?
You know what? I don't know exactly, because all the people that I've worked with as a production cast vocalist didn't have an agent. But at the same time, if you really think about it, if you had an agent for a production cast vocalist role, they can't negotiate you not to do a safety drill, and then everyone else has to. So if that's in your contract, that is like an extra duty technically. You have to do the safety drill, that's maritime law. But, other extra duties, I really don't think that the cruise line would maybe allow you to negotiate that. I'm not exactly sure, but the example that came to mind is you have to do safety drill. And if your agent tries to negotiate you out of that, you're going to lose, you're not going to get the job. So I'm not sure if extra duties, maybe that pertains more towards musicians, but for cast work, I don't know exactly. I haven't heard any.
Okay, so to give you an example, because yes, you're right, the drills and these kind of things, if you're trying to get your agent not to do it, it's just going to be it doesn't work.
Off the ship.
Yeah, you have a set of rules that you have to do depending on your status on the ship, and no matter what your agent thinks or what you think, you have to do them. That's just the army. Yeah, you have a set of rules to do.
This is a tricky one. You got me with this one, because there was a time at the end of my contract where they wanted us to do a couple extra shows, and we did kind of fight that ourselves. But I would say if you're going into it and it's clear on your contract, I don't think they would hire you, because they can't do the show without the other female vocalist just because your agent negotiated out of it. That's a good one. You stumped me on that one.
That's what I do too. I say if you can get a contract without an agent, just definitely do so, because especially there are clauses that say that you are stuck with the same agent for 7 years or however long. So Yeah.
And your agent probably knows more about the industry. They will know more about the industry when you're just breaking into it. So that would be beneficial to have one.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Cool. So what would you say, casting directors? So you are doing some recruiting work for an agency, but that's more for headliners, if I'm right. Mm-hmm. What would you say in terms of like cast vocalists? What would you say agencies or casting directors are looking for in a good cast vocalist? So we talked a little bit about like being fit and being able to maybe to have some dance moves, maybe being able to do some acting. Like, what is it that makes a good vocalist, apart from being very versatile and being able to belt out some songs? What would you say is a great set of skills to have as a vocalist?
Yeah, so, this is a great one. First of all, obviously, if you're going in for a production cast vocalist role, you have to be able to sing. You should have a wide range and have explored different styles of music within your voice, because you can never choose the shows for the ship that you're going to. They just send you to what they think is best. So obviously can sing, can move in some sort of capacity, but you can have the best singer in the room and the best dancer who sings, but if they cannot perform, it's going to be hard for you to kind of move on to the next step. You really have to be comfortable breaking the fourth wall, because people on cruise ships go there to reminisce on feel-good songs. They're there to escape reality and just have a fun time. And you need to not be scared to interact with them, to reach out and touch their hand, to look people directly in the eye. It's not like musical theater or acting where you're just, fourth wall is up, but your stage presence and confidence need to be through the roof. And I think that is what makes a singer stand out, is the fact that they can, sing their hearts out, but also like perform and just have that energy radiate out in whatever they do on stage. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm just thinking how funny it is, because the jobs are so different, working as part of the cast and being a musician. But there's like something in common that I always say to musicians or to, the community on this channel, is the interaction with the audience. So maybe the performing and the stage presence is even more important for the cast vocalist, because again, like, you're on a huge stage in a huge theater with lots of people just watching you just like this, not like in a bar where people are having a drink and talking to other people. Right. But in both environments, what's really, really important is being able to, being confident, having some stage presence, but most importantly, the interaction with the audience. Like, are you able to make people feel something and connect with them? And this is also what really impressed me when we talked about like being a guest entertainer, a headliner, because this is also one of the really important things, is, are you able to get the guests to feel something and to feel connected to you in some way? And I feel like this is just about, like, not even just about cruise ships, but about performing in general. And you become a really good performer when you do that.
Yeah, and it's like we're all performers in our own way, but we're all like sharing the same thing, just in different ways. So for piano bar, you're interacting with people, but it's in a more intimate setting. Whereas when you're on stage, you're also interacting with people and engaging with them, but on like a larger scale. So I think everything, like, for cruise ship performers, like, connects in the way that you do need to be engaging. You do need to have, interaction and be personable, because when you do that, you get better ratings. And when your ratings go higher, you become the best entertainment for that cruise ship and that cruise line. And that's what these people want. So yeah, it's all about ratings, but also just being that performer that is just versatile and exuding that energy.
Interesting. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say so from your own point of view, from your own perspective, because you and I have slightly different perspectives, even though we've both been in the cruise entertainment field for a couple of years, what would you say are the real and honest differences between being part of the cast, being a headliner, and maybe being a solo performer, so the job I did, but from your own perspective. If you can give me the differences between these three things from your own perspective.
So being a part of the cast, you're on for obviously 6 to 8 months. You are backed by dancers, other singers, aerialists. You feel supported. The shows are more theatrical and more, higher production elements. You have the fancy costumes. So production cast, I feel like you're really a team and you really bond and create those strong shows because you're doing them every single week together. And also I think you're more like stable because you have 6 months on board. I think as a headliner is completely different. And a shock. It's just you up there. You are carrying your entire show, which I had a wake-up call with that at the beginning. You don't have anyone really behind you, maybe a band that you just met, but you are really the one commanding the stage. And you don't have time to have a break. You don't have someone behind you to cover you if something goes wrong. I think being a headliner, you are like the rawest form of yourself as a performer on stage because you are carrying that through line. And I think as a solo piano musician, like we said, you're just more engaging with the audience. You have time to create those relationships. You are more relaxed and you make people feel like home and more
intimate.
I don't know, just more, intimate because you're also there for months. I'm not sure how many, but you have time to kind of establish those relationships as well as production casts, though I feel like they're more like, they like to protect their time more than maybe piano vocalists. But as a headliner, you're only there for that cruise. You don't really have time to interact with as many guests because, you're resting, preparing for your show, resting post-show, getting ready to leave. So I think the main differences is kind of all over the place, to be honest.
Completely different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were talking, it just reminded me of a day when I was working at Royal Caribbean, and I had some of the cast vocalists and dancers who came to the bar where I was playing. And all the time what they did, it was always so stressful because I knew how good they were. Like for me, and another note on what you said earlier, is like, I understand how confidence and stage presence is important to be part of the cast, because every single time I've been on a ship and watched the shows, I was so amazed. I was like, wow, these people are so confident. And sometimes they're not, like on a personal level, they just look like they are and like they're unbreakable. Right. And I just love this so much. And on that day when the cast came to the piano bar to hear me playing, I remember that girl who had a huge, amazing voice, who came to me and said, I would never be able to do what you do. Like, it's such a different environment. I would be so stressed to have people like one meter away from me. And I said to her, well, I'd never be able to do what you do. I remember one day when I was performing in the theater, and I was so stressed. And it's just interesting how it's completely different environments. And yes, I agree that the headliners have a very different kind of experience as well on the ship. So great to hear the differences for you. Yeah. Oh
my gosh. Yeah. And what you just said, I get so nervous performing in intimate spaces. Like I actually quite hate it, to be honest. I get so nervous, but if you put me on a stage, like that is where I'm most comfortable. And I feel because productions on cruise ships are so like grand, belty songs, to go from that to like more like intricate songs that you can connect more with the audience is very uncomfortable sometimes for production cast vocalists. So when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally have that fear too. I get so nervous.
Yeah, definitely understand that. I mean, completely different worlds. quick pause here. If you're listening to Martina and thinking, hey, I really want to work on cruise ships, but I have no idea how to get started, feel free to grab the free self-check guide I made specifically for you to figure out if cruise life is even for you in the first place. You can grab it down below for free, and then feel free to come back to keep listening to the conversation I'm having with Martina. So the next question is, it's a comment from someone called Jessica. Jessica, thank you for leaving a comment on one of the videos. She's saying that she's a lifelong singer. She doesn't play any instruments. She doesn't dance. She does no acting. And she heard that band singers get paid less and they don't really get solo cabins. And so I know you haven't really been a singer as part of a band, but I think the question, I'm not sure if that's exactly what Jessica is asking, but the question I'd like to ask you is, do you think that even if, I keep highlighting how being able to play an instrument and being a solo performer is great because you get great pay. A lot of the time, the pay is even higher than in the cast. I know that for a fact. You have more freedom. You can play whatever you want. The contracts are usually more flexible. So I always tend to emphasize this path. And then the headliner path is obviously like the most amazing path that you can, not for everyone, but yeah, okay. We'll get to that in a second because I definitely want to hear, like, from my perspective, it looks like the most amazing path because you have full freedom. You can be on the ship for a week or two. Right. You're paid much more than any other of the two paths. So the question behind this would be, are singers who are like thinking of being part of the cast vocalist, should they think right now that this is actually an exciting path to pursue? Or is it just like not as good as the other two paths? And like, what do you think? Do you think it's actually a good path to pursue and that it's actually worth it to go down this path of being a cast vocalist?
Yes, absolutely. I love the cruise ship industry. I know there has been opinions in the theater world that say that, that talk about the cruise ship industry not being as, I don't know how to say this, like not being as good as the musical theater industry. I don't know, but I always encourage people to take a first contract. You either love it or you hate it. And to me, it's everything that you do is what you make it. So if you do go out and hang out with the cast and meet people from different cultures and sing your heart out and meet guests, like you're going to fall in love with it. But if you're kind of shy and you're lonely and you stick to your cabin, I don't think you're gonna enjoy it. But I definitely encourage people to start out in the cast, just to try it. And if you're not a good dancer, just do research on lines that you see don't require a lot of dancing. There's some lines that are more classical based, and don't, Carnival is, you're a singer, but you have to be like a dancer. And, there's Azamara, who is not as vigorous, have smaller stages. So it's all about doing your research on what works best for you. But also, and Laura, tell me if this is correct, but can't you apply to be a rock band singer and be placed with a band? Or do you have to apply? Mm-hmm. Right. So there's options like that.
I see your question. Yeah, right? So it can be difficult. Like there are some agencies that put musicians together, and so they can put a singer, but a lot of agencies, they don't do that. I was lucky enough to find an agency that did. Like I didn't really succeed the audition at the time. I've been telling this story 100 times, but it can be difficult to find a band. Like the best is actually to have a band on land and to apply as a band to the agency. It's harder to do that, but it is possible. And you're right. Like if you're thinking that maybe I don't want to be a cast vocalist and stuff, there are other paths as well. But here we're obviously here to talk about the cast vocalist. But keep going as you were.
I just always encourage it because you get to travel the world singing, and you're there for 6 months. Your savings go up. You're not paying for accommodations, food, travel. And if it's not for you after 6 months, then it's not for you. But I would say, just do your research, find out what ships you think you would fit best on based off of YouTube videos, other performers, DM other performers who have worked for multiple lines. And once you do that research, focus on applying to those ships. But I would definitely encourage trying it at least once in your life before, deciding if you want to continue in the industry.
I so agree with you. I feel like you can even just do one contract and decide to stop if you want, but that can even open doors like it did for you, where you became a headliner. And so before we talk about, like, if that sounds good with you, before we talk about the transition from being a cast vocalist to a headliner, I'd love to come back to this little face expression you had earlier when I said that the headliner is just the best of the best. Can you tell us what you meant in that moment? Like maybe the downsides of being a headliner, like what you thought of it?
Yes. So I loved it. I love doing my own show. It is quite humbling when you first start out because you are, like I said, carrying this entire show and it's really scary. But to me, I was quite lonely. I was going out. I was working a lot, maybe 2 or 3 gigs a month. I was barely home, which I'm so grateful for. And I think you said like headliners get paid a lot more, and that is true if you are consistently working. But if you are not consistently working and you only have 1 gig a month, you're not making more than a production cast vocalist. So I know many people have, on a post that went viral for me, there was like a back and forth between like, no, headliners make more, no, cast does. And in reality, if you're working consistently as a headliner, you do, and it's amazing. But it's become like so competitive now in the industry that it's really hard to get booked as one and to really get started. It's not impossible, but you really just need that one break and then you're in. And a lot of the lines that we have spoken to as an agency are booked out until end of 2027 now, I'm assuming, and even mid 2028. So as a headliner, if you have an act that is performing very well with ratings, they're not going to try to fix what's not broken. They're going to keep that performer working until there's an emergency replacement where you can like get your foot in the door. But I was lucky enough to be working constantly, but I did get burnt out. You spend more time on an airplane and in airports than you do performing your show. And it can be very taxing, very exhausting, and like I said, quite lonely. I missed that kind of community that I would create on ships by being there for 7 months. So it's all about perspective, but for me, I would definitely say start out with the cast, because it might be a while until you get a gig as a headliner.
I love this. And this is some kind of myth busting that I think is really important for anyone. I think it comes back to, when we talked about the agent question on whether it was worth it or not. Like, there are pros and cons, just like anything at the end of the day. It's like the job that I keep saying is, I think one of the best jobs on the ship is being a piano bar entertainer or like guitar vocalist, because you have amazing privileges, you have amazing pay, cabin conditions, etc. But you're so lonely as well. You're probably as lonely as the guest entertainer that, yes, looks like it's, they're having the best life, glamorous, but they don't have a team, they're on their own. And it also comes down to being a self-employed person where you have to fight so hard to get 1 gig. Whereas when you're hired as an employee or a contracted musician on cruise ships, it's for 4 months, and or 8 months, or whenever your contract is, and you're going to get, keep getting paid every single month, and that is really valuable even in terms of peace of mind.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you so much stability when you have, on board for 4 months or 6 months, and usually if you do well on ships, they will renew your contract for a different ship. So you'll have like 2 months off and then they'll bring you back. And it's guest entertainment is just like, nowadays it's like a game. It's all politics. It's all logistics. It's all who's closer to this ship who can just hop on, who has better ratings, who works better with this demographic. So yeah, and it's just like, it looks glamorous, but it's you can still miss, holidays or birthdays being a guest aunt. And so it's all like pros and cons, and it's all about preference and what lifestyle you thrive in.
I love that. It gives a lot of perspective to anybody watching. So that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a headliner from being a cast vocalist? Like, what did the path look like for you? Because this is such an interesting story, as I've heard a little bit about it already.
Yes. So I was in the cast, and Mr. COVID hit and took away 2 months left of my contract. And so I was literally forced, as everyone else was, to stay at home. And during my last contract, my father got really sick, and I had to leave that contract for 2 weeks. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, maybe I should just not do this for a while. Maybe I should just try to make my own show and see what comes of it. If not, I will go back to ships. I had another contract lined up. So during COVID, I created my own shows. And a connection that I had from college, his dad was an agent who connected me to my current agency, and they took a chance on me. And I just can't believe it. I got booked, and then I kept getting booked, and I worked as a headliner for 3 years, I think, 3 years. But that's kind of my story of how I got started. And again, my story isn't, I did a showcase and got picked. I was one of those people that someone took a chance on me, or someone had a fallout and I snuck my way in, and then I kept getting opportunities. So that I always encourage headliners to have that open availability and flexibility when they're first starting out, because once you're in, if you do well, you are in, and then you can kind of control your availability. But when you're first starting out, just be flexible to do anything to just even like get in to that world,
I love what you're saying here, because I feel like it's so funny to hear it, like about the availability piece, because I keep saying that like every single time I have a musician in consultations.
Really?
Or I always say that, because a lot of the time, musicians think that they can say, oh, I'm available from June to August next year, and they think it's going to work somehow. But in this world, it's like you have to be available tomorrow. And if you're not, just say that you will be. And if you get the offer, then you'll see in that moment if you're choosing to be available tomorrow.
Right.
But yes, like I agree with you so much. It's like, make yourself available, get your foot in the door. It's like I have a lot of people from, who are in their 60s who want to work on cruise ships. And even though I keep saying to them, it might be harder for them because of their age, I'm like, hey, maybe there's a bassist that's missing. Or maybe for you, like in the cast, maybe there's a dancer that's missing. Well, 60-year-old dancer, maybe it's going to be tough.
Hey,
but
I'd love to see it.
I'd love to see it too. But unfortunately,
on,
we can actually make it happen. But like if you get your foot in the doors for, doing a last minute replacement, last minute filler, that's so much easier to get your foot in the door. And then, as you said, once you're in, you're in. So that's such a good advice for anyone watching who wants to be part of the cruise entertainment and to have a job on cruise ships, because that's the way it works.
You know what? And I know I'm just want to go back to production cast. That's how I got in as well. They put out a call for an immediate replacement. And immediate replacement to me means immediate submission. So that same day I sent the video. I was in the midst of graduating from college, so I would have had to fly back for my graduation, so it didn't work out. But then 2 weeks later, I had a full contract. So it's the replacement work that I feel like really can make or break it to you sometimes, and just being fully available. So I guess both my instances getting in were just like replacements or emergency situations.
Such great advice. And I love that your story actually represents that. that also backs up what I've been saying for a while now. And yeah, I just love your story, how you actually made it happen. You were maybe a little bit helped by luck and timing and life, but you just made it happen. You wanted it, and you went for it, and you managed to have this experience, which is so amazing.
Yes, very scary, but very worth it, you know.
And so now let's talk about now. You're doing so much. I have no idea how you do everything that you do in your life.
Yes.
You're doing so much. And the more I'm following you, the more I'm discovering that you have other projects on the side. So can you tell us about where you're at now? How long has it been since you stopped being a headliner? Like what your life looks like now, and like how you are helping headliners, and in the like what you're doing in behind the scenes of the cruise industry.
Yeah. So once I stopped headlining, I stopped because I got married, and it was getting harder for me to leave. I know, I can't believe it.
I love it.
Once I finished that, I became the producing program director for a little island in Florida, the community center there. So I book all of their season of concerts, special events where I hire musicians and live music, as well as lectures. So I got that. And then I was reached out to via my cruise ship agent, and which was very exciting to kind of help him recruit new acts for him and also kind of book acts for him. So I am the managing director for guest entertainment casting and vocal placement operations. So that's a big...
Wow.
I had to look
Not
that
sure
up.
I'm going to remember that.
Right now. Yeah, I know. I never do. But basically, I just recruit acts, bring them on board, and then when there's availability or an open slot, I, present them to the bookers. We work very diligently and hard, but at the end of the day, it's the booker's decision. So no matter how sleepless nights we have sending submissions, it's out of our control. But I do that. I still perform on land when I can, and I am the founder of Stage to Sea, which is where I mentor aspiring cruise ship vocalists and headliners. So I just told myself when I was done headlining, I wanted to make a difference and be there for performers the way that I wish someone was there for me to guide me along. So that's why I made Stage to Sea, and it's basically a platform where I post a bunch of resources there. If there's one-to-one coaching, if people want, it's not required, it's free to sign up. And there's other performers in this platform that ask questions for everyone to see and for me to answer in one place. So that is everything I do. I do sleep
Amazing.
As well.
But you do. I mean, you look pretty good, so I guess you do sleep.
Oh,
yeah.
I try, yes. But when you do something you're passionate about, it just overrides everything. So
yeah, and I need to say, as I was like, when I found you, I booked a consultation with you, that you are indeed very passionate, not only here but also in a one-on-one format. So I definitely recommend booking a session with you, and the school community that you have is really good as well. It allows anyone who doesn't want to have to pay for anything, who doesn't, who's not able right now to pay for anything, and who still wants to move forward, to ask their questions and to get all the resources that you put for them in this community. So yeah, the community, which is for cast vocalists and headliners. So I'm going to link down all your links to your socials and to your school community, so people can find you through there and follow your journey as well, and how you can potentially help them. What is one last thing that you'd like to say to someone who is aspiring to, become a cast vocalist or a headliner, or to just get their foot in the cruise industry and to get their first job, no matter what it even is? What would you say to them if they're a little bit like, hey, am I ever going to get there? What would you say to them?
I would say never give up. And I know that's like cliche, but it only takes one opportunity for you to really get in there. I think prior preparation is key, whether that is keeping your repertoire book up to date with songs that work for cruise ships, doing research on cruise lines and what shows they have. And as a headliner, kind of creating a show that you're passionate about, but also thinking of shows that you think others would enjoy. I think that would be the biggest key. And, like I said, just never give up, because you never know when there's going to be a chance for you, whether it's a headliner, cast, or even, musician. So keep an open mind and keep at it, because it's coming. There's a lot of cruise ships out there, so.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Martina. It was such a pleasure to have you as the first guest on the channel. I absolutely loved chatting with you, and I think you brought so much information to me. Like, you taught me quite a few things, and also to anyone watching this, I kept thinking through the whole conversation how useful this is going to be to some of the people who actually want to apply as a cast vocalist or who are interested in this path. And your experience was such a great experience to hear. You get me?
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. I hope you had a good time too.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And everyone who is following Laura, you're in great hands. She knows what she's doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Martina. And if you're a singer willing to find work on cruise ships, I really hope that you understood today that there's a real path for you, that it is at least as serious as being a solo performer that plays an instrument, and ultimately that it can open doors to much bigger things than just working on cruise ships as an employee. If you're a singer or a musician curious about working on cruise ships, I would really recommend you check out the course How to Become a Cruise Ship Musician, and it teaches you everything you need to know from being a musician on land to actually getting your first contract on board. I've put everything I know from my 4 years of experience on cruise ships, as well as the direct conversations I've had with agencies. And so this course is primarily for solo performers like piano vocalists or guitar vocalists, and partially for duos, trios, or bands who are also interested. The link is in the description if you want to go and have a look. Now feel free to tell me in the comments what guests you'd like me to invite, whether it's ship musicians or agents or anybody in the industry, to answer your specific questions. And if you like this kind of format, do not hesitate to let me know too by hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell down below so you can stay updated. I thank you so much for listening to us today, and I wish you a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next one.